Hello, welcome to Comics Without Capes, where I chat about comics without superheroes. Today, I'm just going through the list of books that I've read in April 2025, and just gonna give you a little summary of my thoughts on them. So we'll see if people are interested in this. I don't know. The first book that I read and finished in April was Boundless by Jillian Tamaki. And that one I did talk about in another video. I thought it was okay. It was an anthology series. I went into it pretty blind and I was not really expecting it to be what it was, but it's kind of Black Mirror-esque, I would say. And it had some that I liked and some that I was not as huge of a fan of in terms of the stories in it. So I also read Fun Home, a Family Tragicomic by Alison Bechdel. This one is a memoir. I'm trying to think of how to describe this one. It's without saying too much. I would say that the easiest way for me to describe this book is the unraveling some of the complexities that come with a complicated parent relationship. All these little nuances of a relationship that's not black and white, and it's not as simple as just, I love my parent and they did everything they could for me. And I think it did really balance those nuances very well. There's also a lot of really good queer representation in this book. I think it's really good at not having that be like the only focus of the book, but because it is a part of Alison's life, it is also kind of a main through line. This book also has some mention of like obsessive compulsions and how they actually play out, especially at a younger age. And I thought that was really well done. I also finished Ice Cream Man Volume 6. This one I did quite like. I think this one wasn't my favorite Ice Cream Man I've read so far, but I did really enjoy it. So Ice Cream Man, if you have not heard of it, it is an anthology series that is basically just showing something different happening in every single little volume, chapter, issue. In every issue, there's just like something different going on. Sometimes there are some crossover characters, but you don't really need to know them. You could pick up any Ice Cream Man and just kind of go into it. But I really love it. It's like almost like chaos horror. You don't know what you're getting, and it's just beautiful, always trying to push boundaries and just try different things. So really I'm enjoying that series. Drawing Power, Woman's Story of Sexual Violence, Harassment, and Survival. I also talked about this one in my anthology video. This one was a hard read, just based on the subject matter, but I do think that comics were a really powerful and good medium to choose for this subject matter. I also read Tangles, a story about Alzheimer's, My Mother and Me by Sarah Leavitt. This one was also a tough read, nonfiction, and I also did a video on this one, which is kind of just a really raw, really honest retelling of what it's like having a parent go through Alzheimer's and a lot of the complicated things that arise from that. The grappling with someone kind of losing themselves, but also sometimes seeing bits of them in there. So it was just really, really well done. The art style, I would say, might hold some people back from being drawn to it, but I think she got expressions so well with the simplicity of these drawings, and she still portrayed what she was trying to portray really well. So as long as you're not like really bothered by things not being super aesthetic, I would highly recommend it if you can handle that. I also read Ghost World by Daniel Clowes, which I did a video on, and this one is, I'm still conflicted. I don't know. So I watched the movie after putting out that video, and I do think the movie was more tolerable for me than the book. I still was not crazy about the movie, but I thought it was okay. And I do think that the changes that they made for the movie did help it. So overall, I think it was a good adaptation. But I still am like, thought I would like you. I like the art, but Ghost World just ain't it for me. I also read We Are Not Strangers by Josh Tuininga, which is a historical fiction graphic novel. I really thought that one was really short and sweet and talked about something that I honestly wasn't all that informed on. So it was a good way for me to learn something in a very accessible way. And the art was really beautiful in this one. Next, I've got Our Little Secret by Emily Carrington. This one is a memoir. It is based on some traumatic SA experiences that have occurred for her when she was a teenager, and kind of dealing with how things happen, the aftermath of that, trying to make a recovery from that mentally, like how much it really affected her life in so many different ways, realizing where it affected her. Yeah, very well done book. It was a really tough read, but it was really well done. So it's one of those ones where, like, if you can, it's really well done at telling this lady's story. The art is well done, in my opinion. I really liked the art. And it was, I think, one of those books that's kind of almost done out of necessity to tell your story, to figure things out. Yeah, a very real, very honest telling of how things can impact us so far down the line. So next I've got Cyclopedia Exotica by Aminder Dhaliwal. This one I quite enjoyed. It was funny, but it also tackled real issues in a way that was quite approachable. I liked that on the surface, it almost sounds like a lot of disjointed little stories, like every little chapter is kind of its own thing, but you are kind of following a group of characters and you kind of get to know them a little bit. You get to kind of figure out like what things they're struggling with, and you end up kind of like rooting for these different characters, all kind of in similar places, dealing with similar stuff, but also their own things. And I really liked that approach to it. I really liked the way this book was done. I really liked the characters. I really liked the art. Overall, I just thought it was a nice way of talking about things that we do need to talk about. So in this book, we've basically got people with two eyes and we got people with one eye. So very obviously visually different. And these people they used to kind of live more separately, and now they've kind of fused together in society. And as they have kind of combined in society, there's a lot of different things where the people who are Cyclopses, they are having struggles that a lot of people of different backgrounds, different races, ethnicities, they are also dealing with. So this book shows a lot in terms of marginalization in society. It's not specifically tying to this racism issue or this person from this ethnicity or this background or whatever thing, sexual orientation, whatever it is, it kind of has that pushed aside and we see something very easy to measure, but also not the same as what we're dealing with. So I think it makes it very approachable. So I also read Creation by Sylvia Nickerson. And this one, I was not really a fan of. It is kind of trying to look at like gentrification in Hamilton, Ontario. And I kind of get what it was doing. Like, it's like this this new mom kind of grappling with changes in the city that she's living in, different kind of issues that are going on, poverty, things like that. But it just was not for me. So this might be the hardest book that I read this month, Grass by Keum Suk Gendry-Kim. This is actually one that was mentioned to me I did a video on my other channel where I talked about how I realized I like comics. And one of the comments that I got on that video recommended this book among a few others. So that's why I picked this one up. It did not really appeal to me from the cover itself, but I went into it pretty blind. And it is a hard read in terms of subject matter. So it's kind of similar to Mouse in that you've got kind of an interviewer doing this book, and you also see a few interactions where the interviewer is showing the interactions with the person the book is about, while most of the book is kind of illustrating and talking about the actual things that happened. It is basically covering the life of one woman who was forced to work as a comfort woman. Comfort woman, it means a woman who was a sexual slave for the Japanese military. So not an easy read, but it does talk about some important things. It shows a lot of resilience, what people are capable of getting through, but it is just a very sad book. So if you are going to try reading this if you are trying to read this one, I would definitely suggest having a good palate cleanser for kind of before, after, that kind of thing, because this one was very tough for me to get through. And I definitely was really craving some lighter reads after doing this one. So I also read Lunar Boy by Sin Wibowo and Jess Wibowo. This one was a graphic novel. I didn't realize going into it that it was kind of more like geared towards like middle school readers. I think I just saw somebody recommend it somewhere. And so I gave it a go, and it was cute. I won't say I like loved it. I did like the art. I did like the subject matter overall. I just felt like I was not the intended audience for this book. So it basically follows this like boy who is found on the moon, and he's basically adopted by this lady who finds him, and he lives on a spaceship for a while. And then he also ends up moving to this other planet where there's a bunch of other people, but he just has to adjust to this new life, where things are very different. And it deals with a lot of like trans and queer issues because the main character is trans. There's also people who are non-binary, have different sexual orientations. So I would say that takes up a lot of the book, honestly. So I feel like there's definitely an audience for this book that might really benefit from all that representation. It felt a little bit like that was the main aspect of the book for me, where like it really didn't hit so much for me. It was a cute, sweet book. It didn't feel like it went super deep, but it did deal with a lot of issues that, especially like queer folks, trans folks, especially if they're younger, they might really identify with some of these characters and really benefit from this book. For me, I don't think I was the intended audience for that book, but it was cute. And the art was nice. The coloring was nice. The next one that I'll talk about is Bubble. This one has a few different contributors, so I'm just going to list them on the screen here instead of trying to say them all out. And this one is based on a podcast. I think I will probably do a video on this because I am just finishing up listening to the podcast, and I want to do a little comparison on how I find the podcast versus the book. But this following the heaviness that was Grass, I needed this book. This book was my palate cleanser, and oh boy, was I so appreciative of it. It is funny, it's light, and I definitely needed that. I don't think everyone would love this book. It's a book that like you either will vibe with the humor or you don't. So Bubble is about people living in an actual literal bubble that's basically run by a corporation. People have paid to live in this bubble. Surrounding the bubble, there is like bush and outdoors things and a bunch of little creatures that can wreak havoc on people living outside of the bubble. But these creatures have also gotten into the bubble. So this book basically deals with this gig economy for hunters of these creatures. So basically someone would see a critter that is from the outside, and they would go on their app and they would be like, hey, there's a monster here. And then contractors would get the alert that, hey, there's a monster here, and go to deal with it. So I really enjoyed the book. I think mostly for the humor. It kind of just makes fun of a lot of different groups of people. Like if you can laugh at yourself and like, especially if you fit in any of these groups and like acknowledge that it's just kind of making fun of everyone. I think it's a fun book. If you like take those things personally, then maybe it's not your thing. They have like a women's book club. They have like podcast bros. They have like a lot of different people who kind of fit into little groups that sometimes get flack. They can sometimes be a little annoying, but it's just feels like good-natured fun to me, honestly. It doesn't feel like it's anything super malicious or super offensive. It's just kind of funny, in my opinion. So it does a good job of kind of like mocking some of the gig economy stuff, and also just like making fun of everyone and just being a cute, fun, light read. I liked the art, the coloring. It was just visually a nice book to read. The characters weren't too serious. People were kind of silly. And then the last one that I will talk about is this one that I read just today, which is Sweet Tooth by Jeff Lemire. I've just got the first volume to like try it out. This is my first Jeff Lemire book that I've read so far. I do have Essex County and The Underwater Welder that I'm planning on reading, but my partner just like picked this up because I had mentioned that I wanted to give it a try, and so he just picked up the first volume for me to try out, and I really liked it. I thought it was a good starting point. It kind of reminded me a little bit of The Last of Us, in that there's that like post-apocalyptic kind of stuff going on. There's things that are making people sick. There's somebody with and then like this guy kind of reminds me of the Ellie character, where they've got something that makes them maybe more immune to certain things. So very similar in the setup so far. I don't know going onward how similar they're going to be. I think they might be pretty different going forward, but for at least this volume, very similar vibes. So really liked it. I really liked the art. So I'm looking forward to reading more of this soon. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts were on them, or if you have any that you would recommend based on my thoughts, because I'm always looking for some recommendations. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.